Hello and welcome to the Story Atlas workshop. My name is Matt Kendall, founder and director of Fromm with a double N.
Benny Wallington, founder of 101 Tokens.
Benny, you and I did this Story Atlas workshop at the New Kind Festival down in Tasmania. We had a reasonably small venue with this beautiful view, but it was kind of disappointing. The only thing that was disappointing is that it was a small venue. There were people behind us that couldn't get in. So one of the reasons why we're recording this is that we had people come up to us. They wanted to go through this at their own time. There were people that had missed out on it that were really interested. So, Benny, that's pretty much why we've decided to do this, isn't it? So that we can sort of share it with a wider audience.
Yeah, definitely. And allow people to follow along at their own pace because we only had a set amount of time to do it in. So we were really hurrying people through a bit.
Yeah.
The idea of this is to take your time and to come up with something that we can be proud of and take forward into the world.
Yeah. So this Story Atlas is a combination of, I suppose, a messaging framework that I've worked with over the years, having worked in communications. I've evolved it over the years, I've added sparkles, but then Benny and I really wanted to sort of move this more towards away from corporates, away from big organisations, and make it more focused on small businesses, community organisations. If you just sort of if you're starting up a cause, we wanted to make this a lot more focused. And so with that, we're quite inspired by Seth Godin's This Is Marketing, his latest book. He covers off a lot of what we're covering off here, and the way he really focuses on change and focuses on bringing some big picture ideas down into things that are actionable, where you're actually going to be able to achieve something and progress and make incremental movement all the time. So Seth's This Is Marketing, can't recommend it highly enough, particularly if you're a smaller organisation. And this is very much influenced this Story Atlas that we've built here. So this whole workshop is based upon the Story Atlas which we printed out for our workshop session. So you are going to need to have this in front of you if this workshop is going to work. If you haven't got it in front of you, then please email us either at matt@fromm.com.au with a double M on the Fromm, and Benny at 101tokens.com. And Benny, if this is on YouTube, it will also probably be in your Google Drive as well, won't it?
Yeah, correct.
Yeah, so just make sure you've got that in front of you because you'll be needing this for the next session. And what we recommend that you do with this video workshop is that with each section, maybe allow 10 minutes per section, maybe 20 minutes for section 2. It's a bit more involved. But 10 minutes for each section. If you end up spending a bit longer, that doesn't matter. But then just with each section, as we sort of pull that up here, just press pause and work away on the panel.
Yeah, we'll actually pop up a symbol of a sharker every time you need to pause. So when you see the sharker, pause.
Exactly. So kicking off on the Story Atlas, on number 1, this is the big one, and this is the starting point. And if you've come to us, or if you've at this point and you're interested in Story Atlas, you have obviously started something, and you've started something because you felt there was something that needed to change, whether that was a small business, where the market was missing something, whether it's a cause, or whether you've got a local community organisation. There is change that you are seeking to make. Now, the mistake a lot of us make is just having these really lofty goals and using them as a starting point. Now, your big vision, your purpose, your goal should absolutely remain and be your North Star. But essentially what we're talking about here is having something that is achievable. It's a hurdle that you can clear, because one of the biggest mistakes we can make is taking on too much of a heavy burden, taking on something that's too big. For just an example is the change you're seeking to make might be to clear the oceans of plastic. If that's not going to be achievable in 12 months, 3 months, so really what you want to do is start to pull it back to, we want to clean up our neighbourhood or clean up our local beach of plastic. Something that is absolutely achievable. You don't want it to be an excuse for inaction. You want to be held accountable to this. It's almost like what would success look like in sort of 6 months' time? So think about the change in that context. It absolutely must be achievable. So for the purposes of this story atlas, we're going to be using 101 tokens as an example, just so you can sort of see what it's like in practice to sort of fill this out and distill your business and or your cause or organisation into this framework. But for the purposes of this as an example, we're going to take it back. We're not going to go 101 tokens as of today. We're going to take it back a bit further, Ben, aren't we?
Yeah, exactly. So just to give you a bit of context, 101 tokens originally started because I was living in North London, drinking about 5 times a week, quite a bit of binging, and it started to really impede my general well-being. I was using alcohol as a crutch, and there just came this epiphany moment when I was laying on my couch watching reruns of the Premier League, drinking beer off my stomach, when, not unlike Homer Simpson actually, when I realised that I was turning 30 and I was like, I can't continue this habit, this lifestyle. And so I went looking on the internet. I was like, what can I join? I wanted a community group for somewhere I could still keep drinking, but not, give it up completely. I didn't want to go to AA because I didn't think I was in that bucket. But there was really nothing there. There was nothing there in sort of a community vibe. And so I decided to sort of take the Tim Ferriss approach and write my own rules. And that's where I wrote the 101 tokens rules, which is basically I wanted to cut my drinking down from 5 times a week down to 2. And so I was allowing myself 101 sessions of drinking, 101 tokens, which is just under twice a week. And basically, every time I drink alcohol, I would write down in my calendar whether it was worth it or not the next day. And this allowed me to draw out the patterns in my drinking, knock out the bad ones and pump up the good ones. Now, I did that for a whole year, and I blogged about my triumphs and I blogged about my failures. And by the end of that year, I'd kind of inspired my friends and family to take on the same process. Fast forward another year, and basically I was developing an app, and fast forward to now, and we've had 12,000 downloads on the app. We're in 76 different countries, and we've got a really tight global community of people I call smart drinkers. So for the purpose of this exercise, we're going to go back to after I'd done my first year of 101 tokens. It's still just, it's an idea that I've actioned out. People have started to take notice, but I haven't really reached out to anyone to get them in and to get them to join the tribe, as it were. So from that point, the change that I was seeking to make was to take all of my knowledge and all these things that I'd gathered over that year and be able to instill that into people close to me. And so basically give them the gift of what I'd achieved over that first year.
So in a nutshell, going back to that point, what was the change you were seeking to make with 101 tokens?
Yeah, so it was to allow people to take control of their drinking without having to give it up completely.
Yeah, amazing. That's just it. It's just something that's achievable. And then we're going to, for section 2 next, we'll be going into that audience, which sort of helps make it, help keep it achievable as well. Great, cheers. Okay, on to panel number 2, where what does your smallest viable tribe look like? Now, Seth Godin calls it smallest viable audience, but we're big fans of tribe, and that's it helps really, I suppose, frame what this is all about. When you're starting out, quite often when people talk about their audience, they're like everyone, and that is really sort of quite unhelpful if you are going to be communicating to people, because in this age of I suppose technological onslaught, we've all got notifications and emails and calendar. It's essentially a bit of information overload. So we really do need to remember that we are speaking to people here. We're going to be taking up people's valuable time. We need to earn their attention. So the best way we're going to be able to start to do that is start to understand them as human beings, to treat them as human beings, to not be just a demographic, but to start to think in terms of psychographics. infographics and start to build a bit of a picture around them. Now, obviously, there's going to be some stereotypes within this, and they can be helpful, and it's going to be a bit of some assumptions here initially as you start to build a picture for who your audience is. But what you want to do is really start to think about who your smallest viable tribe is. So what is the smallest number of people that you need to reach with your message in order to make your efforts worthwhile? So in this, we've got some supporting questions here in the panel which we'd like you to fill it out. And it's who is it for? So think about the person. It might even be a persona. It might be one of your friends. It might be somebody you admire. It could even be somebody that in the media that you follow, but somebody who you feel like you know and understand quite well, where you kind of feel like if you could get them on board to this, then they could possibly bring on board others as well. What is their worldview? This is really important. You know, what is the story they tell themselves? What is the story they tell themselves and they tell other people about themselves? How do they view the world? What are the things that are really important to them? So a person who, for Australian audiences, a person who reads the Daily Telegraph is going to have a very different worldview to somebody who listens to Radio National. So these things are really important because you're going to have to be speaking to them in a language that they understand. It's going to flick their switches for them. So just start to write down what is their worldview, what is important to them. And then finally, what are they scared of and what are their hopes and dreams? So these are things that sort of, what are the things that keep them up at night? What are the things that they aspire to for them and their family? These are all things, you start to build that picture, it becomes a person, you start speaking to a person, which is going to be really important. We're not going to go into sort of incredible amount of detail here for what Benny did for 101 tokens, but Benny, for the purposes of this workshop, what did your smallest viable tribe look like?
Yeah, quite simply, it was just my social circle. So thinking about it like that, it wasn't necessarily my tight group of mates, but because we've got Facebook, it was literally people who I'd connected with in the past, and a lot of that was over drinking. So I knew that they were sort of already ingrained in that. Their worldviews very similar to mine. Alcohol played a big part in their identity, and then I guess that stems into what they're scared of. And when you're shaking up people's identities, people can feel like they're going to miss out, the classic FOMO, and they're also scared of potentially losing relationships, whether it could be something to do with work, whether it could be something to do with their personal group, but their hopes and dreams are the same as mine, and that's why the storytelling worked. It was that people want to have the best life they can possible, and they want to be showing up as best they can for their most important and loved ones, and they want to succeed. And basically, me being able to tell that story, they could see themselves in what I'd achieved.
The other really important thing about that is what Benny did was he focused on a group of people he had access to, and with that he could, I suppose, work on what 101 tokens was, so that it was as good as it possibly could be for that group. So Benny's archetype, or for his audience, was that tribe that he was speaking to. So he developed 101 tokens so that it worked really well with them. And once you get that right, then, because at that scale you can tweak things and everything, you can get it right for that audience. And once you get that right, then if they've got a similar worldview, then they're going to know other people who have a similar worldview, and then they start to tell their friends, and then it can start to ripple outwards, which is exactly where you want to start with this kind of thing. Yeah.
So have a go at that.
So on to number 3. Another really important one is, what is the promise you are making to them? All effective marketing comes down to articulating what that promise is in a way that your audience understands it. And what we mean by that is we're asking something of our audience, and what they're going to expect is something in return. So with this, it doesn't have to follow this literal structure, but if you if you provide us with X, or if you give X, then you will get Y. It's as simple as that, really. But essentially what we're saying is, if you do this, then this will happen. If you want a really simple framework, but you do not absolutely need to follow that format. Articulate it in a way that works for you. So, Benny, in terms of 101 tokens, how did you articulate what the promise was that you were making to your audience?
Literally, if you live the 101 tokens lifestyle, if you embody it, then you can have more cash, more quality time, a better, healthier lifestyle, and yeah, those were the main benefits. So it was like, A, shift your habits with this proven program, and B, literally we actually got them to define what they wanted. So yeah.
Yeah. Happy to say no to that.
Exactly.
Cool. So number 4, we're now getting to the pointy end. What is the action? What action do you want them to take? So this is the hard part. And really, what you really need to do here is tell them what you want them to do. So you need to sort of step back, and it could be signing up, could be signing on, it could be buying your product, it could be just getting involved or going to a Facebook page. When they get the message, when you're getting it out there, what is it that you really want people to do? It's best if you can introduce some kind of tension, and that can mean the fear of missing out or a sense of urgency. If your sign-ups are going to be closing this Friday. So really sort of think about how you can introduce a little bit of tension in there that's going to give people a bias to action. If they feel like they can think about it later, then they're probably going to forget about it if you think about the onslaught of messages that we all get. So try and introduce some tension into that. Benny, in the case of the 101 tokens, what was the action that you wanted them to take?
Yeah, pretty simple. Most people are on Facebook. It was join our free Facebook group, which was a private group. But when they got there, and this is important, people don't need to know the whole story. They just need to be hooked in enough to take that first action. But when we got them there, I asked them one question, and that was, our motto was to drink smart and to live more. And I wanted people to tell me what they would sub live out for. So whether it was drink smart, surf more, drink smart, read more. So get them to start thinking about what's the motivation for them to shift their habits.
Yeah.
And that really locked it in for them. Yeah.
That's really important. And I think at this point we're just thinking about that initial action, but it's probably another workshop. But you want to keep people moving down the path. So political parties, for instance, if you donate, they'll try and encourage you to become a member. If you become a member, they'll say, can you do phone calls or door knocks? And then they start to sort of get you into the path of getting more and more involved in that political party. So it's those kind of actions like that, you want that to be constant. But in this instance, just think about what is that first action that you want them to take.
Yeah, so straight into the Facebook group.
Yeah.
Simple.
Why should they trust you? Number 5. This can be, if it's just about yourself, it can be quite confronting. It can even be confronting if it's about your business. But I think that's important, and it's a time to be a little bit honest, possibly be a little bit vulnerable. One thing that we do recommend is possibly doing your research. Even if it's yourself or a brand, go out and ask some friends. If it's a brand or a business or an organisation, go out there and speak to others that have either experienced what you're offering, or even sort of part of staff. Ask for different points of view on why people trust you, or why others should trust your business or your organisation. And then you can start to sort of see some patterns emerge. Don't worry about the outliers. There might be some really random ones that are both positive and negative. Don't worry about that. You'll always have those outliers. Look for where the patterns are. Look for where that centre and commonality is, and then you can start to build a message around that. This is also not just passive, but also active. So you can help build trust. So who in your network is influential, particularly within your tribe? I'm not going to preempt you, Benny, but for instance, if Benny had a mate who was really influential within his group of friends and got him on board, then there's a good chance that those other guys are going to come on board as well. So it would have made sense for Benny to target them. So remember with this, the reason why we want you to focus on this, that the secret to messaging is it's not what you say about you or your organisation, it's what others are saying about you that is important. So Benny, I hope I hadn't stolen your thunder, but in the instance of 101 tokens, why should people trust you and 101 tokens for this?
I think for me, it was at that point in time, there was quite a lot of content out there and I'd been vulnerable through the whole year. So it's all well and good to say, oh, you can change your habits and, with this system. But the reality is there's going to be screw-ups along the way. And the fact that I did admit to my screw-ups really allowed people to kind of see the change that had happened and the progress. And the fact that I was saying that this is still a journey, we touched on it before, this is going to be a co-created solution and it has really built into a co-created solution and it's still evolving. Inviting people into that conversation, but not freaking them out completely, not saying they're going to have to do all this stuff, but really getting them to, I guess, trust that I've walked the path. Now it's a little less, I guess the bridge, it's a little less shaky now, so follow me over.
Awesome. And how could you not trust a face like that?
Yeah, exactly.
So this is where we want to pause and look back and do a bit of reflection over what we've filled out in the story atlas so far. So with this one, we want to go through and look at what elements of panels 1, 3, 4 and 5 leap out to you as connecting with the audience that you've identified in panel 2. So probably the first step is to re-familiarise yourself with your audience, who they are, what their worldview is, what their hopes and dreams and fears are, and then look at through the content that you've written into panels 1, 3, 4 and 5 and see what leaps out at you. What do you think is really going to flick the switch of your audience and your smallest viable tribe? This is something, just do a bit of a word cloud, just write them all down. Once you've got a bit of a word cloud down, maybe start to circle the ones that leap out to you the most. There might be a few elements, there might be just one. But in the case of 101 tokens, when you went through this exercise, what leapt out to you?
Yeah, totally distilled down to you can take control of your drinking habits without having to give up the booze.
Yeah, wow. It's powerful, right? Powerful and simple. So we're getting towards messaging. So that's something that we know is going to connect with our audience, our smallest viable tribe. Okay, finally, we're at the last panel, and what seems like the end is really just the beginning, because the messaging that you're going to land on here is really, I suppose, the overall master message that is then going to be articulated very differently across all sorts of different users and platforms and channels. So, for instance, you might be using, just like you have a different conversation with your grandmother than you do with your mates, you're still you, you're still authentically you, but you're using different language. In the instance of this master message, you're going to articulate differently in a pitch deck, on Twitter, or in a blog post. There's going to be lots of different ways that you'll be using this message, but this is ultimately the message that you want to land on. And really, for the exercise of this, what we want this to be, for instance, the message that people would share. So somebody, a customer of yours or a friend of yours, talking about what it is that you're doing, how would they express it? How would you like them to express it? In an ideal world, how would you like, if somebody was asked about your organisation or cause, how would you like a person to refer to it? So with this, we really want to take on board everything that we've gone through and really distill it down into a way that's going to connect with our audience. So we've got that sort of element of number 6, which is that thing that you really want to land that's going to connect. But now you need to distill it down a little bit more. You want it to be pithy, you want it to be simple, and you want it to be powerful. And ideally, just a fairly sort of simple structure would be here is the setup, or here is the bait, and then here is the hook. So it provides the first part 1 explains the context, it explains what you do, and then part 2 explains, the action that you want them to take, and that call to action. So Benny, in the case of what is the story you wanted people to tell for 101 tokens, what did you land on?
Yeah, so quite simply, hey, there's a guy named Benny. He's worked out a way for you to take control of your drinking without having to give it up. He's a mad dog. If you want to connect with him, if you want to connect into the group, you can join the free Facebook group. It's called 101 Tokens. Yeah. Done, yeah. So because I'm a kind of person, I'll launch the waffle copter and start like just spewing out things about like all the benefits and all this kind of stuff.
Yeah.
But the reality of what we're trying to get you to here is like Maddie said, what's the cool thing that you're doing? What's the change you're looking to make? And how can people get involved? And maybe you don't have to say he's a mad dog unless you want to. But I think like everyone will put their own spin on it. But the more information you give people with this stuff, the more chance they've got to kind of blur how they articulate it. And I find that quite a bit with 101 tokens. So this exercise is just perfect distillation, and let people run with it how they will.
I think that's really important. Even the mad dog touch, it depends on your audience. Sometimes you might need to be quite serious. It might be a serious topic with a serious audience. But in this instance, Benny's got a certain audience in mind. He wants to also. It's also great to sort of express yourself and have your unique personality. It will help you stand out in the array of the constant barrage of messages out there. So, once again, think about what is unique about you. What is unique about your audience? Where do those two things interconnect, and then you can start to use some language like that really sort of it makes it more emotional, makes it more powerful, makes it stand out more. So you will have hopefully filled out your story atlas, and it can be a bit of a lonely journey sort of doing that yourself. It's ideally you'd be doing it either with a team or with somebody or a friend, sound it out with them. But it is something that really helps with being workshopped. So what Benny and I are going to do is a bit of a group Zoom. And Benny, did you want to talk through how that's going to work?
Yeah. So that final question, number 7, I just want to add one thing. Words of affirmation are really cool as a practice to have in the morning, and to have that number 7 worked out and to continually repeat it once a day, that'll help you, scrutinise a bit more in your head about, is that the right message I want to be telling? And you'll just be frothing on it a lot more once you keep repeating it, and it just helps you kick off your day. Sometimes you feel a little bit like, is this all worth it? But that really helps. But what we're going to do with the group Zoom, me and Maddie will jump on a call for about 2 hours. If you haven't used Zoom, it's a really awesome team group messaging video conference piece of software, and we'll be sitting on there and we'll facilitate the session, but it'll be literally, you can ask us any questions and we can run mini workshops within those questions and really co-create, because that's what Newcom was all about, which is co-creating the future. So man, there's going to be some really cool ideas in that workshop, so you'll fuel off each other. So so if you're interested in that, our email addresses are there: matt@fromm with a m.com.au and benny at 101tokens.com. We really hope that you found Story Atlas helpful. Stories are how we've come to be, the apex species on this planet. We imagine things, we dream them up, we turn them into ideas, and then we spread them as stories, and that's how we change the world, and that's how we achieve the goals that we set out to achieve. So hopefully this helps you get on that road and get on that path to achieving the change that you seek to make. So it's bye from me, and pound it.
See ya. Cool.